There's a specific moment in every relationship where the power shifts, and most men never see it coming. It doesn't happen during an argument. It doesn't happen when she ghosts you. It happens in a single sentence, spoken so naturally that you don't even recognize it as the beginning of something much bigger. 4 words. That's all it takes. 4 seemingly innocent words that rewrite the entire dynamic between you and her. And the moment you hear them without understanding what they really mean, you've already lost the game you didn't know you were playing. I'm going to show you the 4 words women use when they've decided to take control, and more importantly, exactly what to do when you hear them. Because once you understand what's really being communicated, you'll never be caught off guard again. Most men think manipulation looks obvious. They imagine drama, lies, or calculated schemes. But real influence is invisible. It doesn't announce itself. It disguises itself as consideration, as reasonableness, as simple conversation. That's what makes it so effective. You're not defending against something that feels like an attack. You're accepting something that feels like normal communication. Think about the last time you felt confused in a relationship. Not angry, not hurt, just confused. You couldn't point to anything specific she did wrong, but something felt off. You found yourself second-guessing your own perception, wondering if you were overreacting or reading too much into nothing. That confusion wasn't accidental. That's what happens when someone reshapes reality, using language so subtle you can't trace where your certainty disappeared. Women don't need force to influence men. They need ambiguity, and the 4 words I'm about to reveal are masters of ambiguity. Each one creates just enough uncertainty to make you adjust your behavior while giving her complete deniability if you ever question what happened. Let me show you how this works. Number 1. Complicated. When a woman tells you it's complicated, most men hear an explanation. They think she's describing a genuinely complex situation that requires patience and understanding. But here's what's actually happening. She's buying herself unlimited time and unlimited options while keeping you emotionally invested. Complicated is the perfect shield. It's vague enough that you can't challenge it, serious enough that you feel guilty questioning it, and flexible enough that it can mean absolutely anything she needs it to mean in that moment. Think about how powerful this is. 1 word gives her the ability to delay decisions indefinitely, maintain other connections openly, and make you feel like the bad guy if you push for clarity. Let me give you a real scenario. A man meets a woman. They connect deeply, spend weeks building something that feels significant. Then one day, he asks where this is going. She looks at him with genuine concern and says, "I really like you, but my situation is just complicated right now." Most men immediately shift into problem-solving mode. They start thinking about what might be complicating her life. Work stress, family issues, past relationship trauma. They become understanding, patient, supportive. But here's what they miss. Complicated isn't a description of her circumstances. It's a test of your boundaries. She's measuring how much ambiguity you'll accept, how long you'll wait without guarantees, how easily you'll abandon your own needs to accommodate hers. From her perspective, she's not being cruel. She's being strategic. She's maintaining her freedom while keeping your investment active. She gets your attention, your emotional support, your exclusive focus, all without having to commit to anything concrete in return. The psychology behind this is fascinating. Humans are wired to complete unfinished stories. When something is left open-ended, our brains obsess over it far more than something with clear resolution. That's why complicated is so addictive. It keeps you mentally engaged, constantly analysing, constantly hoping that if you just wait a little longer or try a little harder, the complication will resolve in your favour. But here's the truth that changes everything. When a woman genuinely wants to be with you, her life doesn't become more complicated, it becomes simpler. Priorities clarify, Decisions get easier. Obstacles get addressed rather than highlighted. Complicated only appears when she's preserving her right to choose without choosing. So what do you do when you hear this word? You don't argue. You don't try to simplify her complications. You don't wait around proving your patience. You do something most men are terrified to do. You make it simple for her. You say, "I understand. Let me know when things aren't complicated anymore." And then you step back completely. No lingering, no checking in, no being available while she figures things out. This does something powerful. It removes the benefit she was getting from the complication. She can no longer keep you invested while remaining uncommitted. Suddenly, the complication either needs to resolve or she needs to accept that you're no longer waiting. Most women aren't used to men who won't tolerate ambiguity. They're used to men who bend, who wait, who accept whatever timeline she offers. When you refuse to operate in the fog, you force clarity. Not through pressure, but through absence. A woman can't keep you on hold if you hang up the phone. Number 2. Space. Few words have destroyed more relationships than this one. I need space. On the surface, it sounds reasonable, even healthy. Everyone needs space sometimes, right? But when a woman asks for space, what she's really doing is creating distance without responsibility. She gets to pull away while making you feel like supporting that distance is the mature thing to do. Here's the framework most men don't see. Space is never about getting closer to you. It's about creating room for something else. Sometimes that something is another man. Sometimes it's her own second thoughts. Sometimes it's just the comfort of having you as an option, without the obligation of actually choosing you. But regardless of the reason, space always means the same thing. She wants less of you without ending it completely. Picture this dynamic. A man is in a relationship that feels solid. Connection, chemistry, consistency. Then suddenly she tells him she needs space to think, to breathe, to figure things out. His instinct is to respect that request. He gives her the space she asked for. He doesn't text too much. He doesn't pressure her. He waits patiently for her to come back refreshed and ready to reconnect. Meanwhile, she's out living her life fully, seeing friends, exploring possibilities, basically operating as a single person while he sits in relationship purgatory. This is the trap. Space isn't mutual. She gets freedom. You get waiting. She gets to explore. You get to hope. The power balance tilts completely in her direction because you're still emotionally committed while she's emotionally exploring. From a psychological standpoint, this creates what's called anxious attachment activation. The person who gets pulled away starts craving closeness more intensely. The person who creates distance feels less pressure and therefore less attraction. Space doesn't make the heart grow fonder. It makes one person anxious and the other person comfortable. But here's what women rarely admit. The request for space is often a response to something they felt before the request. Maybe they sensed you becoming too available. Maybe they felt the relationship lacked tension. Maybe they started taking your presence for granted. The space request is their way of resetting the dynamic without having to explain what shifted. And most men, in their effort to be understanding, reinforce the exact pattern that created the problem. So what's the play? When she asks for space, you don't fight it. You don't ask how much space or for how long. You don't try to negotiate terms. You simply say, absolutely, take all the space you need. And then you create even more space than she asked for. You stop initiating contact entirely. You remove your attention. You redirect your energy into your own life, not as punishment, not as manipulation, but as genuine recalibration. What happens next is critical. When she realizes you're not waiting in the wings, when she sees you're not fighting to close the gap she created, something shifts. The space that was supposed to give her comfort starts creating uncertainty. She begins to wonder if she miscalculated, if she pushed too far, if the space she wanted is becoming permanent. And that uncertainty is what brings people back, not waiting, not pursuing, but the genuine possibility of loss. Space only controls you if you remain in it. The moment you step fully out, you're no longer playing the game she designed. Number 3. Whatever this word sounds dismissive, even childish. But don't let its casual delivery fool you. When a woman says whatever in response to something you've expressed, she's not being indifferent, she's being strategic. Whatever is a shutdown disguised as agreement. It ends the conversation without resolution, gives her the appearance of going along with your decision while preserving her right to bring it up later, and most importantly, it trains you to stop expressing your actual preferences. Let me break down how this operates in real time. A man makes a decision about something in the relationship, where to eat, what to do on the weekend, how to handle a situation with friends. She disagrees. But instead of stating her disagreement directly, she says, "whatever you want," or just "whatever," with a specific tone. Most men interpret this as her deferring to his choice. They think they've gotten what they wanted. But what actually happened is much more sophisticated. She gave passive agreement, which means you made the decision, but she retained the ability to be unhappy about it later. You own the outcome. She owns the victim position. If things go well, she can claim she went along to be supportive. If things go poorly, she can point out that she never actually wanted this, but you pushed forward anyway. It's a brilliant tactic because it puts all the responsibility on you while giving her all the leverage. From a relationship dynamics perspective, this is what psychologists call covert contract rejection. She's rejecting the explicit agreement you thought you reached, while creating an implicit agreement that she's somehow sacrificing her own desires for yours. This builds resentment on her side and confusion on yours, because you can't understand why she's upset about something she supposedly agreed to. Here's a concrete example. A man suggests they spend Sunday watching football. She says, "whatever you want." He takes that as agreement. Sunday comes, she's visibly unhappy, withdrawn, giving short responses. When he asks what's wrong, she says, "nothing," or "I told you, whatever you wanted." Now he's in an impossible position. She gave permission, but he's somehow still wrong for taking it. This is the whatever trap. It makes you responsible for her unexpressed feelings. What most men don't realize is that whatever isn't about that specific decision. It's about establishing a pattern where you stop making decisions altogether because the cost of her quiet resentment is higher than the benefit of getting your way. Over time, you start asking her opinion about everything, deferring to her preferences, avoiding any choice that might trigger that loaded whatever. And just like that, she shaped the entire relationship without ever having to directly state what she wanted. So how do you handle whatever when you hear it? You call it what it is: incomplete communication. When she says whatever, you don't move forward. You stop and say, "that doesn't sound like agreement. What do you actually want to do?" If she doubles down with another whatever, you make the decision clear. "I'm going to do this. If you're not genuinely on board, say so now, because I'm not accepting whatever as an answer." This removes her ability to have it both ways. She either participates in the decision honestly, or she accepts that her vague response meant actual agreement. The key is refusing to own her unstated preferences. You're not a mind reader. You're not responsible for interpreting tone and subtext. You're responsible for clear communication, and you require the same from her. When you stop accepting whatever as a valid response, you stop giving her the power to rewrite history every time she's unhappy with an outcome she never honestly opposed. Whatever only controls you when you pretend it means something it doesn't. Number 4, fine. This might be the most dangerous word on the list because it masquerades as resolution. When a woman says fine after you've said something or made a decision, most men breathe a sigh of relief. Conflict avoided. Agreement reached. Everything's fine. except it's not. Fine is the emotional equivalent of a ticking time bomb. It's temporary peace that guarantees future explosion. Here's what fine actually means. I'm not fine, but I'm not going to explain why right now, and I'm storing this moment as evidence for a future argument where I'll claim you never listened to me or care about my feelings. That's the translation. Fine isn't acceptance, it's delayed confrontation with interest. Let me show you how this plays out. A man and a woman have a disagreement about something meaningful. He states his position. She states hers. They're at an impasse. He expects either continued discussion or genuine compromise. Instead, she goes quiet, then says, "Fine, do what you want." He thinks he won. He didn't. What he did was trigger a recording device in her, mine that will replay this moment every time a similar situation arises, building a case that he's selfish, that he doesn't value her input, that she always has to sacrifice what she wants for what he wants. The psychology here is fascinating. Women often process conflict differently than men. Where men see isolated incidents, women see patterns. Where men want resolution in the moment, women are connecting this moment to past moments and future moments. Fine is her way of ending the immediate discomfort of disagreement while preserving the emotional data for long-term pattern building. This is why men are often blindsided during arguments. She brings up something from 3 months ago that he thought was resolved. He thought it was resolved because she said fine, but fine was never resolution. It was storage. Every fine you've ever accepted without pushing deeper has become ammunition in an arsenal you don't even know exists. From a manipulation standpoint, fine is perfect because it penalizes you for things you didn't know were problems. You can't defend yourself against accusations of a pattern when each individual incident was supposedly fine at the time. You can't point out that she agreed when her agreement was coded language for disagreement. You're fighting a case built on evidence you thought was neutral. But here's the deeper issue. Fine trains you to avoid conflict entirely. After enough experiences where fine led to unexpected consequences, you start backing down before she even says it. You start preemptively surrendering your position, anticipating her disapproval, choosing her preference over yours just to avoid the minefield that comes with pushing forward. And that's the real goal. Not to win individual disagreements, but to make you afraid of disagreeing at all. So what do you do when you hear fine? You don't accept it. You say, that doesn't sound fine. Let's actually resolve this. If she insists she's fine, you make it explicit. Okay, if you're fine, then this is settled and we're not bringing it up again. Are you genuinely fine with that? This forces honest communication. She either admits she's not fine and you work through it properly, or she commits to being fine and loses the ability to resurrect it later. The key is rejecting false resolution. Real agreement feels clear. Both people understand what was decided and why. Fine feels murky because it is murky. It's agreement without buy-in. And when you stop accepting that type of agreement, you stop giving her the power to rewrite conflicts retroactively. Fine only controls you when you mistake it for peace. Now let me connect these 4 words to the bigger picture. Complicated, space, whatever, fine. None of these words are about what they claim to be about. Complicated isn't about her circumstances. Space isn't about personal growth. Whatever isn't about agreement. Fine isn't about resolution. Each word is about control. Specifically, control over the emotional framework of your relationship. Women who use these words aren't necessarily manipulative in the conscious sense. Most of them learn these patterns from watching other women, from trial and error in past relationships, from unconsciously recognizing what works to maintain influence without direct confrontation. But conscious or not, the effect is the same. These words create environments where you're always adjusting, always uncertain, always responsible for her unstated feelings. The reason these words work so well is because they exploit male psychology. Men are wired to solve problems. When she presents something as complicated, you want to simplify it. When she asks for space, you want to give it. When she says whatever, you think you have freedom. When she says fine, you think you have resolution. Each word triggers your instinct to fix, to accommodate, to move forward. And that instinct, as reasonable as it seems, is what gives her control. But here's what changes everything. These words only work on men who accept them at face value. The moment you start recognizing the pattern, the moment you refuse to operate in ambiguity, the entire dynamic shifts. You're no longer reacting to her framing. You're requiring clarity. You're insisting on honest communication. You're rejecting the passive-aggressive substitutes for actual conversation. This doesn't make you difficult. It makes you clear. And clarity is the one thing these 4 words cannot survive. Complicated collapses when you demand simplicity. Space loses power when you create more of it than she wanted. Whatever fails when you refuse to own her unstated preferences. Fine dissolves when you insist on real resolution. The ultimate truth is this: you are never fighting individual situations. You are fighting for the right to exist in the relationship without constantly translating coded language. And that fight is won not through arguments, but through standards. When you simply refuse to engage with communication that isn't direct, you force the entire dynamic to evolve or end. Most men are afraid that setting this boundary will cost them the relationship. Sometimes it does. But here's what they don't realize. A relationship that only survives because you tolerate manipulation isn't a relationship worth keeping. The woman who can't communicate directly, who needs these 4 words to maintain control, isn't ready for genuine partnership. And the moment you're willing to lose what isn't real, you create space for what is. You've now seen the pattern. 4 words that reshape dynamics while hiding in plain sight. But knowledge only matters if you apply it. The next time you hear complicated, space, whatever, or fine, you'll have a choice. Accept the frame she's offering or require something better. That choice will determine everything that comes after. If this resonated, subscribe for more breakdowns on relationship dynamics most men never see coming. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And drop a comment telling me which of these 4 words you've heard most often. Let's see how universal this pattern really is. Remember, you can't control what she says, but you absolutely control what you accept. And the moment you stop accepting less than clear communication is the moment you stop being played by words that were never meant to inform you, only to shape you.